So did you know that if you are in a workplace and you're making decisions based on intergenerational differences, you could be causing an issue depending on what country you live in. So if you live in a country that has age discrimination legislation and you are creating training about intergenerational differences, you are probably going to, first of all, create unconscious stereotyping. You're going to get people to think that every generation wants the same thing, whereas no generation is homogenous or have the same values or purposes. While there might be high percentages of particular desires or hopes, it's not an homogenous group. And you are at risk that your organization will have an age discrimination case, because in Ireland, for instance, discrimination is based on the fact that treated less favorably. And if your managers are going out there giving people different opportunities or supports based on their generational position and not others, then others can deem that you are treating them differently and less positively based on their age, which is a generational piece. If you've then done intergenerational training in the workplace and all of these things, you're heightening those risks. So can we understand that understanding that high percentages of different generations statistically having different experiences is valuable for workforces to consider when trying to attract and work with different generations? Yes, valuable. It is not helpful to go and teach your middle managers or your leaders to treat people differently based on their age. What's much more effective is to use a humanistic approach that has a psychological lens. So something that is true for all generations, but that the outcome might be different. So the one I tend to use is motivation orientated. If you teach your managers how to help people access and connect to their motivating factors, then their factors will be different based on lots of things, their identity, their age, all of those things. But you're not getting managers to decide what it is or isn't. You're getting them to use a universal process that can be used for everyone, but will benefit everyone, because they're not making assumptions or stereotypes about the experience. They're simply using a motivation model that's a humanistic, psychologically driven model to inform how they might work with someone. So rather than saying, well, you're Gen whatever, so therefore you want X, Y, and Z, they'll say, what motivates you? What's important to you? What gives you purpose? What helps you feel like you're having an impact? When do you feel most connected to your work? They'll ask universal questions that they can ask everyone, regardless of the generation. And therefore, the answers are what's tailored because the individual is giving you the answers rather than you making assumptions about the individual because of their generation. The other comment that happens is people are like, oh, well, some generations don't understand the other generations. We don't need to understand generations. We need to understand what is required for our teams to perform. And so rather than thinking about understanding, if we use a motivation model, what we can do is learn to understand what motivates the person in front of us. And rather than us saying, oh, I don't understand it because I empathize with it or don't empathize with it, if they tell you, you understand it. You just might not agree with it. You might not empathize with it because it's not your experience. But again, if we use compassion, what we can do is say, well, actually, I've asked you a question. You've given me an answer. I can use that answer to make good decisions and to support you, which is a completely different thing to deciding what people need based on their generation, or thinking that because you don't understand a generation that somehow they're problematic, or I don't understand a generation as if any individual from a generational differences, while there are statistically higher preferences of different things, they're not a homogenous group. So you cannot treat people based on their generation. Also, in any country that has age discrimination, it's actually illegal to do that in the workplace. So let's be a little bit smarter and be really careful with this identity-based inclusion work that actually results in discrimination and stereotyping. Identity has an impact on people's needs, but if you make assumptions about people based on their identity, you're stereotyping. And you're more likely to make discriminatory choices, even if you didn't intend to. Have you ever faced this? Tell me about, how do you work with people in different generations? How are you processing the fact that not just different generations, but different people have different wants and needs in the workplace? Have you been to these trainings and you're like, oh my God, that's a big risk? Yeah, share what you're thinking about that, because so little people are talking about it and it's driving me around the bend.